going to be a really important week for Brett Bielema and Aaron Henry because they have to figure out what is wrong with this defense, where we knew it wasn't going to be last year, but it shouldn't be like this. There's too much talent, especially up front, but I actually thought the defensive front played a lot better tonight. You saw Johnny Newton look like Johnny Newton. I thought the outside linebackers played a little bit better. They got to make plays in space, though, and teams are just getting them horizontal. Obviously, there's some dynamic playmakers against Kansas, but the angle some of these guys are taking, Brett Bielema said the tackling and the fundamentals is what is alarming him most. I asked him what's most concerning, and he said a lot about that. And then the penalties, they still had some boneheaded penalties. Taz Nicholson with one of them today. Those are the things that are really hurting them, but the scheme isn't working right now, and I don't have a lot. I got to go back and watch and see what the film was, but they watched the Toledo film. Kansas watched the Toledo film, and the linebackers for Illinois are really struggling. Kansas really attacked them in the passing game. So we saw 2 years ago Illinois get embarrassed defensively on the road at Virginia, and Ryan Walters and Brett Bielema made some changes. Brett Bielema didn't want to make parallels with that today when I asked him about it, but I think this has to be the same kind of moment of what are we doing defensively and how do we self-scout and address it?
Yeah, I think they're two different moments in time, but I think the response to both of those moments are probably going to be similar. Glad you mentioned the linebackers. Kansas, they put the Illinois linebackers in conflict. There was one drive in particular. They should get it out on some of those swing passes, those short passes to the backs. And then Illinois, PFF, missed tackles all, right? I mean, there was a ton of missed tackles. Jalen Daniels made people miss in ways that was pretty tough to watch at times if you're an Illinois fan, seeing the way that he made some of those defensive players miss. But I think the rushing defense, it wasn't – last week it was like, okay, DeQuan Finn, it's a dual threat. Jalen Daniels had 24 yards. I know sacks, I think, plenty of that. But Devin Neal, 120. Daniel Hishaw, 98. You can't – that's not what this Illinois defense does. It gives up those leaky, rush defense. Like, that's just not a combination for success. But Bielema mentioned the quarterbacks, right-handed quarterbacks being able to escape to their left is like a fundamental breakdown. So it's just things that you thought you didn't have to think about with the team coached by this coaching staff. And there's a lot of fundamental flaws. I don't know. They're going to have to address the linebacker thing because I think that's – I wonder if there's a James Cruz sighting coming because Brett Bielema has screamed from mountaintops how much he likes that kid. I wonder if you're going to see him more.
No, they really struggled. They looked slow. They looked really slow at the linebacker tonight. One thing I want to bring up, guys, Ryan Walters was really good. He was really good at his job. You know who else was good at their job? Devin Witherspoon, Sidney Brown. They let you play that way. Quan Martin, those guys were really good. I think there's some bright spots in the secondary, but you're seeing in man coverage, these guys can't cover like they did last year. Plus, when you get a Jalen Daniels scrambling around like he does or DeQuan Finn, you got to cover for 6 seconds. That's really hard to do. That play Jalen Daniels made at the end of the first half was just a phenomenal play. But still, Illinois, 9 of 13 on third down. They can't get off the field on third down. It's around 60% opponents are converting against them so far this season. They got to figure it out. So Aaron Henry, this is a huge early test. And listen, we like Aaron Henry. We like talking to him. But this is part of being a DC is now the pressure's on you. Now this is the big job. There's a lot of pressure. I know all the Illini fans saying what they're saying. How do they adjust to this? Because Ryan Walters was in a similar place 2 years ago. We forget that was not a great start to the Brett Bielema and Ryan Walters defense. They made some adjustments, changed some personnel around, and figured out a way to put their guys in the best positions to succeed. We'll see if they can repeat that.
Yeah, we have to say, and this isn't to let Illinois off the hook because there were a lot of things that need corrected. Jalen Daniels was awesome. Like, there is a reason he is hyped as good as he is, and for all the Big 12 preseason players, like, that dude is awesome at quarterback. Again, Illinois had a lot of things it needs to fix, and it needs to take that. But there are plays that he made that I just don't know that you're going to see a quarterback make those plays again the rest of the year. I thought last week against Toledo, I thought they kind of overthought it all offseason, like, oh, my God, DeQuan Finn can run, and they really overthought their defensive front. Tonight, I thought they played better on that, and then Jalen Daniels just did awesome things that really good quarterbacks do, but there are the factors that we talked about. This secondary, did you lose 3 top 70 draft picks? Like, that's – you don't just replace those guys on a whim. Like, that takes time. I know they've spoken confidently about that group all offseason. There's a reality that there's mean, that's like $100 million that you lost, right? And those guys, so you can't. People are going to have to grow into those roles. And I think you're seeing those growing pains. You're seeing them at cornerback. I think Xavier Scott, I don't know how many. There's some growing pains. He's been pretty impressive. Yeah. But man, it's Isaac Darkangelo looks like a big loss right now. Like there was just
Calvin Avery. Calvin Avery looks like a little bit of a loss. I thought the nose tackles played a little bit better today. Like again, I think the defensive front was a little bit more disruptive, especially pressuring Daniels. Daniels can just escape those things. Gabe Akis had a couple moments where it's like, oh, he's going to get him, and Daniels eludes him. Seth Coleman had a couple of those. Johnny Newton against any other quarterback tonight probably has 4 sacks.
Oh, yeah.
What he was doing was he made himself money. I know nobody cares about it when you lose like this and your defense stinks, but Johnny Newton was really good, but Jalen Daniels is able to elude some of those. I don't think you play another quarterback quite like him. Jeff Sims is more like DeQuan Finn to me. Drew Aller is more of a pocket passer. So I think this defense isn't going to face as many of those guys, but you have not passed the test these first 2 weeks.
No, you haven't. Let's say, like, we expect Matthew Bailey in some capacity to play next week. And I don't want to make that as like don't worry about it, Matt. Like, there's cause for concern on what you're seeing in some aspects defensively. But I think just his presence, I wonder what that does rotationally, how that changes things, if it changes things. Like, I feel like we should mention, like, we're probably going to see him in some capacity on Saturday against Penn State.